Hi, BookTube. I'm going to talk about the books I read in November. I don't usually do this, but I was looking at the books I was reading in November and realizing it was, if I just encapsulate my reading in that month, it was really something. And I just wanted to share it with you. I've talked about all of these books before, but if I look at them as a whole, there are some interesting trends. I just made some tea, which is why I'm in the kitchen. I have here good old, this is Bigelow. That's interesting. I usually get Twinings, but just the standard Earl Grey. What I'm really loving right now, by the way, is this Twinings Lady Grey, because it says delightfully blended with bergamot and lemon, and I love that, just a little bit of lemon. It almost tastes like orangey lemon, but it doesn't taste like lemon tea. It's really bright tasting. So that's what that's my new find lately. Okay, let me talk about the books I read in November. So I have them written down here, and I have a few what I'll just call contemporary fiction, and then a ton of backlisted fiction. So in the contemporary side, I talked about the fact that I read the Pulitzer Prize winning book called Foreign Affairs by Alison Lurie. And this is a book that I learned about from Charles at CSOP. It's one of his favorite books. And while I think that it's one of those books that has a couple aspects of it that are dated because it's set in the 1980s, it was written in the 1980s. Oh, it's snowing. Well, here we are in Pennsylvania, and it's early December. Oh, the leaf blowers from somewhere just turned on. So you're going to hear that right now. Yeah, it was, besides the 1980s feel of it, in terms of just women's roles and how they were, professional roles and how they were talked about back then. And I don't know if I can even explain it, because I was one of those people in the professional corporate office environment. But there was a lot of emphasis on women looking a certain way, and so that was just something I didn't want to be reading about. That it's not a lot. It's not a lot of this book at all, but the way that Alison Lurie just very deftly crafts a plot with the characters that are in Alison Lurie's life in London was entertaining. And Death Valley and Eileen. So you know how much I love Death Valley. It blew me away. It really blew me away. That is a top pick, just a real recommendation if you can read a book like that. See my previous video about Death Valley. And then Eileen, same thing. Like, Eileen, for a completely different reason. Eileen is a winter novel, if there ever was one, and it is also darkly funny. The dialogue is so fantastic. If you can stomach an Ottessa Moshfegh, then I highly recommend it. The dialogue is precious in this book. What else? Backlisted. I can hardly read this because it's a really gray day out, and this was really like the only light I was getting other than like a light bulb. So this is why I picked this window. Backlisted books, I have a couple of them here. Oh, here's the Foreign Affairs, Alison Lurie. And I actually own these books, which is rare for me because I'm usually getting 99% of the stuff out of the library. But Penelope Mortimer was the Backlisted author that I read 2 books from. I reread Pumpkin Eater because I had read this last fall and I just gulped it down. I'm really glad I reread this because I got a lot more out of it the second time and I didn't remember a whole bunch of stuff. And then for the first time I read Daddy's Gone A-Hunting. And reading them back to back was a really good idea. I highly recommend it because they are both about unhappy wives in this time in our history in like mid-century or maybe 1940s, 1950s. And women that are in roles of being a mother, being a stay-at-home mother, housewife in this in these eras, and that just eventually not being enough for them. And yeah, so I really recommend reading them close together to get the differences. This is definitely my favorite, The Pumpkin Eater, but just, you know, by a hair. And then I read my first Elizabeth Bowen, which was The Death of the Heart. This was the book that I started in the summer, and I just couldn't get into it. And then I read it in November, and yeah, it really stuck. It was a simmering kind of story, and I think there's one more Elizabeth Bowen that some of you commented that was a favorite, and I don't remember which one it is now, but it would be the one that I go to. Can I find it here? It's called, oh, I can't find it. Anyway, I'll put it in the notes. Then, what am I missing? Oh, the Muriel Spark. Oh my gosh, The Driver's Seat. Just read it, read it, read it. Weird, just sharp writing. Really unusual main character from the start. You do not know what the heck's going on from the start. And I loved it. I loved it. Because you're given just enough information that you think you know what's going on. You have enough to figure out what's going on. Oh, just read that book. And I'm gonna talk about Patrick Hamilton in a second. But The Joan Didion is the nonfiction from it's an essay collection. It's called, oh my gosh, I didn't even write down what it's called, but I'll put it in the notes. Excuse me. It's her essay collection that just runs from the 60s to like the year 2000. It was excellent. Her writing, I mean, is so entertaining. And then Patrick Hamilton's Slaves of Solitude. This is a story that is written about the some people in a boarding house outside of London that have been displaced, or some of them have been displaced from London because of the bombing during World War II. The main character, whose name I'm forgetting already, is living in, you know, unique situations. She doesn't want to be in this boarding house. This boarding house has some longtime residents. The dialogue, the interactions with people in the boarding house and outside the boarding house, how she's living in this alternate universe that she never wanted to be in had it not been for the war, and that then spurring other things that and interactions and people that she's meeting, like the American soldier. So I would say that of all the books I read in November, that and Death Valley, so a backlisted one from Patrick Hamilton, The Slaves of Solitude, and Death Valley. But I gotta also say Eileen. So yeah, oh no, I'm forgetting. Translated fiction, Vigdis Hjorth. I just finished Will and Testament. Let me just tell you. I'll finish my thoughts on Will and Testament because I talked about it in like 2 videos ago in a reading update. What I think is Vigdis Hjorth's Will and Testament is as intense as Is Mother Dead, but probably more intense. So certainly read the trigger warnings if that's something that, that you need to do. And I think what's brilliant about Will and Testament is the standout way that she paces the information given to the reader. It is so excellently paced that you know you're not getting the full story, and she just layers it in different places, in different unique ways. I just appreciate so much that the writing in that book. It's not an enjoyable book to read. It's not my favorite of the three, but you know, Long Live the Posthorn is really growing on me. I feel like I could reread that like a year from when I read it. Like I could reread that in the summer just so I could be less annoyed at how slow it was in the beginning and how much I didn't care, because now I get the whole gist of it. Like I want to understand it better. Anyway, so I would say for me, Is Mother Dead and Long Live the Posthorn are probably my favorite two of the three that I think have been translated into English. Those are the three that I've read. So what am I doing now? I mentioned in a video that I just did that I'm going to, in December, be rereading Stoner. And by the looks of this little post-it, I have begun rereading. I do take off like my post-its and the little turning down of corners that I do. I just remove all of that after I've read a book because I don't want those markers in it in case I reread it. So this I've just started. I've started the next book in the Trollop series, which is the last one. It's called, I forget what it's called. It's the Barsetshire Chronicles book. So it's something like the Barset something. Just started that, and I'm taking Kudos along with me on a trip. So that's all I can say for now about early December. And that's November wrapped up. Thanks for joining me. Please join in the conversation below, and I'll see you on the next one.